the installers and the specifiers, the people behind our homes, creating plans, foundations, frames and walls to build homes filled with love, laughter, tears and joy. You're architects of innovation, designers of comfort, builders of dreams and installers of perfection. With skill and determination, you're building a better New Zealand, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Jib, let's build.
Kia ora, ina mana, ina reo, Ngāti Whātua, nā kaitiaki o te whenua nei, ka nui te mihi. Ka mihi hoki ki waipapa taumatarau, e whakakotahi māna nei tātou e raho i te maru, e te toi me, e te whakairo nui. He mihi nui hoki ki Windstone Wallboards, aka Jib, mō tō rātou tautoko e tēnei kaupapa. So tēnā koutou katoa, greetings to all gathered here today, especially to Ngāti Whātua, the mana whenua of this place. We also acknowledge Waipapa Taumatarau, University of Auckland, and bringing us together under the kaupapa of architecture, identity, and critical reflection. Finally, we thank Windstone Wallboards, John Kitchen, aka Mr. Jib. Thank you for your generous support in helping us bring this Fast Forward series to life. So when I was asked in 2021 by Architecture New Zealand to reflect on a 30-year absence from Aotearoa, I wrote an article called Transcolonisation 1990 to 2020. The article traced 30 years of the slow road from to Te Ao Māori architecture and the quest for an emergent architecture on these islands to reconcile colonial traditions and European influences with a sustained interest in the Indigenous project. I note there was an engram in the diagram which charted the frequency of the two words Māori plus architecture and you could see it was only since 1990 that there was actually any currency or connection between those two words. There was also a blip way back there, I think it was probably around Te Tiriti. That particular article from Architecture New Zealand transformed into our first Fast Forward Transcolonisation Archi Lecture series. So we whakapapa here to 2021. Back then we had 5 speakers. The first was Tim Melville, who's the only independent Māori gallerist, and Nigel Burrell, who was a curator of Tu Toi Ora, the largest exhibition of contemporary Māori art ever staged in Aotearoa. Nigel controversially resigned on the day the show opened, and the reasons why are evident in the documentary Tu Toi Visual Sovereignty by Chelsea Winstanley, and more on that later. Our second speaker was our first Māori law professor. That's not first woman law professor, it's the first Māori law professor, who spoke of how, in another world first, how Māori values of taeao and kaitiaki gave rise to legal personhood, which afforded the Urewera forest and which were afforded to the Urewera forest and the Whanganui River. So, of course, what does legal personhood mean, particularly in an architecture school? So granting legal personhood to a natural landscape feature recognises that feature as being a legal entity in its own right, similar to how the law recognises corporations, trusts, charities as people. Perhaps one day an ancestral house, the whare tipuna, might also be afforded legal personhood. The third speaker was the Māori novelist Witi Ihimaera, and interesting in these slides, the previous lecture series held in 2021 was during COVID times. So the one opportunity we had to talk kanohi ki te kanohi face to face, we really ramped it up, and so we invited The Sound of the Pacific, was a Samoan Māori jazz band probably the only time you're going to get to see a Moog synthesizer on a lectern. And we had a rollicking time with Hoete Ihimaera, who's lost in the centre of that crowd. And of course, some of you might be here today. I can see Matt Liggins there, I can see Denise Belston, I can see Melanie Milicic, I can't see Bill, but I can also see the person at the top of this photograph, our new head, Michael Davis, who I refer to as the MD. So the fourth talker from the last series was Paul Majuri, leader of the Tipuna Maunga Authority. So he took Jacinta Ruru's legal personhood and applied it to the various maunga. You would have seen the contentious removal of some exotic species, particularly on Mangere Mountain. And he came in and spoke about maunga, mana, and money. And finally, our last speaker in that series was the filmmaker Chelsea Winstanley. Chelsea's agreed to keep the connection with the last series to this one by speaking. She speaks next month. She's at the Oscars on Sunday, so hopefully she could bring some anecdotes. And she made as I said, the documentary Tūtoi Visual Sovereignty. So, e tēnei pō, ka hono e ao taone ki te ao takitaki mā te ringa toi o tētahi uri no Ngāti Awa. Taku whanaunanga ko Graham Hoete, also known professionally as Mr. G. Ko ia te ringa toi whakahonorei i a tātou pirako ki ngā pakitara nunui o te ao. Mā i ngā konahi o tātou kaumata ki ngā whakapako koko e whakanuia ana te mana o ngā iwi takitaki. Ki ngā whakahuia e kororo ana mō te aroha, mō te whakapanaunatanga, mō te hokinga mai o te wairoa ki te whenua. Ko ana mahi, toi e whakahoki ana te ira Māori ki te pokopu o te taone. E te tīwhera ana e ngā kōrero, e te wero ana e ngā tirohanga. E whakamana ana e ngā mōtuka o te transcolonisation. Nau mai e harangatira, kauhu mai e ki te kaupapa nei. These transcolonisation talks today that span 5 years and offer countless generations of connections, unions and relationships and bonds or hononga. Tonight I would like to welcome an artist whose work bridges the city wall and the ancestral story, my cousin. So I had to sign a conflict of interest, even presenting tonight. Graham Hoete, who professionally known as Mr. G, has large-scale murals that have transformed the urban landscapes across the world, and our Tūranga Waiwai of Mōtiti Island. From monumental portraits honouring our kaumātua and Indigenous leaders, to photoreal works that restore Māori presence in public space, to community-driven murals that centre aroha, identity and belonging, his practice returns Indigenous narratives to the heart of the city. His art is a living expression of transcolonisation, reclaiming space, reframing histories and reinscribing mana into the built environment, with 43,000 Instagram followers, surpassing even our own in-house artist Matt Liggins, that under the handle at mrg.hoete.art. Graham has built his transdisciplinary research beyond the libraries and laboratories of the university and enacted it upon the whenua. E tēnei pō, nau mai, haere mai, rangatira. Welcome to Waipapa Taumata Road, and welcome to this lecture series.
Tēnā koe e te whanaunga. Tuatai ake, mātua ake ko ngā tātou kaumarutuna ki tō tātou matua nui te kiko o te rangi. Mōna i tauwhiro mai ki tōna mai aorere māreri ki rungi a tātou i tēnei wā. Hoki whakaaro ki ngā hungumate, ko wehi atu ki te pō, haere, whakangaro atu rā. Hoki mai nei ki a tātou te pitora, a tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. Tēnā koutou ngā kaiarehi o tēnei whare wānanga. Kia koe hoki, taku whanaunga, a Tony. Roa te wā, awa roa te wā ki te kiti a koe. Nō reira, nōku te honore, ki te hara mai, hei kai kōrero, hei tohaina oku whiako e pāna ki tēnei kaupapa ko te trans-colonisation. Ko Mauao, ko Pūtauki, oku maunga, mā tātua, tāki tumi oku waka, Ngāi Te Rangi, Ngāti Ranginui, Ngāti Awa o ke iwi. He kararo ahau o ngā kararo inu tai, o te haupapa ko atu te mautere o Motiti. Ka rere atu ki te motutere o tōku whaia, ko matakana whakaruru hau o te awa nui tērā. Ko Graham Hoete tōku ingoa, anō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. Kia ora everybody, just wanted to give a loving and warm respectful greeting to you all. Mihi anō ki te mana whenua o konei, Ngāti Whātua, mihi kau atu ana kia koutou, nōku te honore, ki te taimai, ki tā koutou whenua, a taurikora, o reira, mihi ana kia koutou. So it's a real honour for me to be here, to receive the invite from my cousin. So I just thought I'd start off just with a video, just to provide a bit of context in terms of what I do, and then I'll get up and share the rest of my kōrero. So. My name is Graham Hoete, also known as Mr. G, and I'm a multidisciplinary or multi-titulary artist. Now, I found in my journey that some people like to try and box you into one medium or discipline. I'll pick up a paintbrush, because I paint. Oh, you're a painter. Or, I'll pick up a file or a chisel. Oh, he ringa whao koe. Or I'll pick up a spray can. Oh, you're a street artist. And just goes on, because I love to, I'm a graphic designer as well. I love the digital space. I've held exhibitions in galleries too. And I love it all. And so one of my passions is, as a ringatoi, ieneira in these days, is how do we navigate that space in between te ao tawhito, and how do we preserve the integrity of our traditional art forms, but how do we also remain open and innovative in terms of, just like our tupuna, in terms of moving forward into our future. And so I love to navigate that spectrum, and there are a lot of ringatoi Māori out there that ask me a lot of questions too, a lot of younger ones, how do we navigate that space in between? Ko te pūtahitanga, that convergence point. And so that's one thing that I'm super passionate about. And so he ringatoi matarau hei, what is that? Basically, I love to explore a range of different mediums. And that's just me, that's the thing that makes my heart sing. As I've explored many different mediums, I've actually acquired a greater understanding, respect and appreciation for the many different art forms, but also the artists who actually engage in those art forms too. So there's huge value and understanding in that. Kia ora. So I just wanted to play that video just to kind of lay a bit of a foundation, provide a bit more setting and context in terms of what I do. Also my relationship to Tony, so his father and my father are twins. From a small island in Tauranga Moana called Motiti Island, and a population of about 40 people. We've got no power there, still dirt roads there, and some of those locals over there still use what's called a long drop. If you don't know what that is, this might be a good thing. But I just really want to honour my cousin too, because he's a real inspiration to me as an artist, but also as an architect, and just the way he thinks and his perspective on things. So the theme of my kōrero and talk is hononga. So hononga is the Māori word for connection. But I don't want to just talk about a literal connection. I want to talk about it in a way of capturing our intimate connections from a perspective of te ao Māori, and how we weave that into space and place. How I do that through through weaving narrative and storytelling, through visual arts as well, and how powerful that can be in terms of transforming communities. I've done a lot of that stuff, and my friends here as well, Charles and Janine, mihi ana kia korua. I've done a lot of work similar throughout the whole country and in the world as well, and we understand the power that resides in the visual arts, especially when it comes to, I guess, curating visual spaces through the visual arts, creating spaces in communities, towns, cities, and all that through the visual arts. But I really want to try and lay a foundation of te ao Māori. Now, there's probably a lot of you here that are not Māori, and so I really want to try and help you at least grasp or get a glimpse into the power and beauty of the approach te ao Māori can bring to buildings and space and all that through. I'm going to talk about our tūpuna whare, or our marae, mine and Tony's marae on Motu Island, and the carvings. But before I do that, I actually, when I talk about hononga or connection, so to some of you here, this might be just a standard walking stick. You know, this is my father's, so I carved this for my father. And so my father has been the main speaker on our marae on Motu Island for 30 years. And that's a long time. But there's three very special things that pertain to hononga or intimate connection when it comes to this tokotoko that I carved for my father. So one is the type of wood that this tokotoko or orator's stick is made of. It's made from the yellow pūtakawa tree. Now, most of you may know what the pūtakawa tree is. It has the red flower. There's a type of pūtakawa tree that has a yellow flower. That pūtakawa tree actually originates from our island, Motu Island. And so that's not just us saying that, that's like tree arborists, that's like a lot of Māori historians throughout the country all acknowledge that the yellow pūtakawa flower or the yellow pūtakawa tree is from Motu Island. So this, the momo or the type of rākau or wood of this tokotoko is made from that yellow pūtakawa tree that we have. So we actually have one outside our house on Motu Island, Mum and Dad's house. So this was carved out of that. So the name of that yellow pūtakawa tree we have is called Turitia Matakatia. Some of them might just go over your heads, but locked up in names is another beautiful, it's like a portal. It's like a portal, it's like a window into our histories, our whakapapa, all of that sort of stuff that pertain to Motu Island. And so just the type of wood that I'm holding here, it has its own mana. It's imbued with story, whakapapa, and mana. And so that's what I hold here. It's not just a stick. Also, there's a bird I've carved in the handle here. That is a karoro, or a blackback seagull. Now, when my father gets up to speak on the marae, he identifies himself as a blackback seagull. Why does a man get up on a marae and identify himself as a blackback seagull? Well, it's actually another really beautiful aspect of te ao Māori. Why he does that is because there's a kiwaha, or it's a saying, a beautiful poetic saying that is from our island, and it's karoro inu tai. So it actually translates the blackback seagull that drinks the tidal waters of the moana. So it's actually a poetic metaphor of people or iwi that are accustomed to living by the sea. So karoro inu tai, or the karoro, or the blackback seagull that drinks the tidal waters of the sea, is a picture of people that have an intimate connection to the sea or the moana, and that's us. We're from Motu Island, karoro inu tai. So he karoro ahau, he karoro ia. So we are karoro from Ngāti Rangi. We say that as a way of And it's another beautiful, poetic, and as an artist, I froth on this sort of stuff, you know. I love all these metaphors. They're just packed with beauty. And so that's another little, so an example of kararo iñi tai. So my mother, she's going on 80 now. She still goes diving. She goes gathering kina and seafood and stuff. And you don't really hear of a lot of old kuia going diving and stuff, but she is an example of this kararo iñi tai. We have young kids on Ngāti Te Island who know how to shell a paua, open up a paua with their thumb. Again, that's a picture of kararo iñi tai. Now, you might be thinking, sitting there listening, what has this got to do with architecture and stuff? Again, this is really, I'm just laying a foundation of te ao Māori, and in terms of we have such a rich reservoir of whakapapa, story, connection, intimate connection that we draw from, that helps in terms of, I guess, for me as an artist anyway, before I even start making or creating artwork, I have this rich pool that is not just a cool, pretty idea, but I'm connected to it through my genealogy, through my whakapapa, and it's a very empowering, healing thing. So that's the kararo. Now, you'll see I've carved these names here as well. So at the top here, I have Toroa. So Toroa is the captain of the Mātātua Waka. And so Mātātua Waka, that's us, Ngāti Awa. Well, some of us here as well, Ngāti Awa. Mātātua, so he was the captain of Mātātua Waka. So all these names, I've got all our ancestors from Toroa, the captain of Mātātua Waka, all the way down to my father here. So this is just packed. It's jam-packed with mana. Not the object itself, but the kōrero that it carries, the mana, you know, all their journeys, all these ancestors. So when my father, when he stands up on our marae on Ngāti Te Island, he ka tūpakari, he can stand strong in his own identity, or tuakiritanga, and it's a very powerful thing. And so I share this just to give you all a glimpse, because as an artist who's very passionate about storytelling, this is one of the most precious things that we have as Māori here in the world, is our stories and our connection to our stories, our Indigenous stories, and they are a true taonga. They are so precious and beautiful. And so I just wanted to lay that as a bit of a foundation, because coming into, so that's the toko there. And we talk about this whole concept of supporting my cousin's theme on transcolonisation. I live and breathe it, man, every day. You know, I think I'm touched on navigating in between te ao tawhito and te ao hurihuri. So what that is how do I, as a Māori, as a ringatoi Māori, as a Māori artist, how do I navigate this space of preserving the integrity and whakapapa of our old traditional art forms and all that sort of stuff, but how do I also remain open and innovative? And so I navigate, and we navigate, a lot of us navigate in that space in between, you know, and I call it te pūtahitanga, the convergence point. And so it's the same thing again for me, not just in the art world, but I think also as a Māori, but I'm also a Christian. And so again, we have these two worlds of te ao Māori, this other, you know, perspective and tirohanga on I tēnei ao, but also te taonga mai o te kaitiana, o te kaiti, and so there are different worldviews regarding that too. And so here I am again, how do I navigate that space in between? And so one of my real inspirations regarding how to navigate this space, te pūtahitanga, is this master carver from Runga Whakaata, from a place called Manutuke, Rahurihi Rukupo. Now he was the one that led the carving of that whare tūpuna inside te papa, te hauki tūranga. And so he was a tohunga whakairo, and he is kind of considered like the Yoda, if you're going to talk in Jedi terms. He was the Yoda of te ao whakairo when it comes to carving, was this man Rahurihi Rukupo. But he was also a Christian. And so there are a lot of, in some of his autobiographies and stuff too, I was really interested in how did he navigate a lot of, I guess, old Māori belief systems and also belief systems within the Bible, and how did he navigate all that sort of stuff. So I just want to mihi to you again, cuz for this topic, because you know, I think a lot of we live in this space constantly, you know. Anyway, so I just wanted to touch on that as well. But my next, just wanted to touch on. So that there is our tūpuna whare, tamatea ki te huatai. So that's our marae on Te Island. Now, I just wanted to touch on a few little aspects regarding, so the amo, the two posts on the sides there. So I want you to focus in on the eyes. If you can just have a little look at the eyes there. Now look closely. Now some of you might think, oh, those are just plain eyes. They kind of look quite cartoonish in style and all that sort of stuff, but those are intentional. They're painted that way intentionally because they actually represent maramataka. And so that represents the moon phases and stuff. So if you look at that, you'll see, you know, they represent moon phases. Now, why do our carvings, or the eyes on there, have moon phases on the eyes? The reality is, that's how our tūpuna, our ancestors, lived on Te Island. They were in tune with the rhythms of maramataka. They had to survive, to, you know, in terms of understanding tidal flows, fish, you know, the currents of the sea. All of that governs the fish. You know, you also, in terms of planting and the marakai and gardening and all that sort of stuff, again, maramataka. And so that is a tohu, or a symbol, that I guess reminds us and reminds our people to always stay in tune and in rhythm with maramataka. And that's again another, I guess, symbol of, or tohu, or connection regarding kararo inu tai. So that's one thing. You'll also notice down the bottom there, the legs, there's almost like a gap between the legs, and they kind of form like a diamond shape. They form a diamond shape, and that, again, that's intentional. I was fortunate enough to have passed down some of the old kōrero, or explanations of some of the patterns of our carvings, and so that diamond shape actually represents, is based off the Pātaki, or the Kolshek constellation, and it relates to, you know, Pātaki is the flounder. It relates to good times to go fishing, all that sort of stuff again. And so, thing is, we just recently had our whare recarved, and it was important to me anyway, because I had that knowledge. It was important that the new carvers understood not to delete or edit or not put that diamond shape in there, because they could have easily done so. It would be like, oh, it looks quite, you know, funny or ugly or whatever sort of thing. But the thing is, if they had left that out there, you know, the future generations would have forgotten. Well, that kōrero, rich kōrero from our ancestors, would have been lost. And so again, you know, it's kind of like Transformers, more than meets the eye. And so and this is the beauty of te ao Māori and whakairo and all that sort of stuff too, you know. It's just packed with kōrero and all that. So, you know, I'm reminded, you know, for our ancestors living on islands like Motiti, life was shaped by maramataka. Our architecture was reminding us to live in rhythm with our environment. And so these are just some tohu, or symbols, that kind of, I guess for me, being from Te Island, having intimate connection there, understanding the kōrero of whakairo, you know, it's for me about weaving a rich tapestry of kōrero, history, whakapapa, meaning, all that sort of stuff too. And so, yeah, the whare tūpuna was not just a shelter, it was a map of relationships between te ao wairua, whakapapa, histories, land, ocean, and stars. You know, and so, man, we're just so blessed as Māori, you know. I think in terms of, we look at, I've been to a lot of marae throughout the country, you know, and oh man. And I think on the trans-colonisation side of things, we have a lot of whare karakia, a lot of churches built on marae as well, marae complexes that have been carved, that have tried to describe or tried to navigate this whole journey of, because a lot of Māori, you know, followed ihu kraiti, you know, and there is some, and I know it all, you know, there's the doctrine of discovery, there's a whole lot of, you know, kino that went on as well in terms of some of the colonial aspects of Christianity too, but there's also another side to the paipera and the Old Testament and ihu kraiti in terms of, I think we talk about colonization and stuff too. Well, Jesus Christ himself was crucified by the colonial Roman Empire. You know, there's all these kind of things that we can kind of relate to, and so yeah, it's a big wānanga, it's a big rabbit hole, and it's one of those rabbit holes that I actually love taking a deep dive in, you know, because that's where I live, you know, and yeah, so anyway, so this painting here, this is a portrait I've done of my father. I had an exhibition at the Tauranga Art Gallery and I called it home. And so the carvings and stuff were all based off, you know, my tūpuna whare. You'll see a yellow section in the middle there, which is the, you know, paying mihi to the yellow pūtakawa flower. We also have a kupinga down the bottom. The harakeke was sourced from Hoete Island as well. These stones, sinker stones, were all sourced from a beach, Tumu, on Hoete Island as well. And so all this stuff is just, again, the theme of my kōrero is hononga, connection, intimate connection. These beaches that I mentioned, I got so many memories, you know, just yeah, just beautiful memories with my whānau, with my parents and stuff. And so, yeah, you'll notice the face up top there, it has two tongues. And again, there's another whole kōrero to that. It actually, a lot of wharenui throughout, or marae throughout Mātātua rohe or region, you'll see a lot of marae, they actually have the two tongues. So to some, the two tongues represents tōtara wāhi rua, which actually represents there was a strong disagreement in the hapu or the iwi and stuff regarding a meta. It can also mean represent kauairunga, kauairaro, which speaks to the heavenly realm, or this, and also te ao kiko kiko, or the natural realm. And it can also represent someone who says one thing and does another here. So there's all these kind of rich kōrero inside these in te ao whakairo. So yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to check how am I doing for time, because I want to. Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to some examples, I guess, in terms of so one kaupapa my wife and I, one project my wife and I created was called the Tūmanako kaupapa, which is all about painting murals alongside in 13 small towns throughout the country. So this was alongside with rangatahi or young people from those small towns. And we intentionally targeted these small towns because there's a lot of depression, anxiety, suicide and stuff as well. And so we wanted to use mural visual arts as a form of hei rongoa, or just as a healing agent through working together, facilitating these young people, painting these murals. But before we even painted the murals, we actually go to the marae of those towns, and we would connect with the kaumātua there. We'd learn a lot of their traditional stories, like the kararoinu tai and all that, but Tūrangi with some beautiful stories as well throughout the country. So we done Tūrangi, Tokomaru Bay, Kaiteri. We also done, we done 13 of them. Yeah, all small towns, and it was such a powerful kaupapa and project. So we got the young people to actually sit, learn a lot of their traditional stories, and then we actually handed it over to the young people to create a mural or design a mural that actually reminded them of those stories. And through the visual arts, you're painting big murals, you're communicating and you're keeping and preserving those stories in a public space, and it's powerful. It's really powerful. A lot of these kids didn't even know, like we done one in Shannon, a small town called Shannon, and a lot of these kids didn't know some of the original Māori names of Shannon, and a lot of the rich stories that were inside these names too. And some of these stories these young people were actually connected to the ancestors in these stories too, and so it was a huge rediscovery for them as well. And so it was really just again tapping into the power of the visual arts, visual storytelling, and preserving those stories as well. So yeah, I guess, and Tūmanako was the name of that project, which is the Māori word for hope. And so we were using mahi toi, visual arts, as a vehicle to influence and communicate and preserve, empowering, inspiring local stories, traditional stories from the iwi of those areas, and keeping them alive. And so we had another really powerful Count no Pōtiki, whakatohia. We painted a portrait of tō rātou Manataparu Muriwai, their chieftainess there. And I've got a list of powerful testimonies, of young people, and that led on to other cool things of doing projects with the FIFA World Cup games with these young people, and got to take them to some of these games, and they helped out, and it was just a really cool experience here. So one example, I guess, from the many murals that I've done, one was in Taranaki. So I was given an opportunity to paint a large portrait of Hana Tūmara Jackson. So she was the leader of Ngā Tamatoa, which was all to do with, they were the ones that laid the petition down for Te Reo Māori to teach it in schools and stuff. And so it was a real honour for me to do that. Anyway, so they flew me over there, and we were in New Plymouth, looking around in the city. I was with the iwi and the council guys, and we were all like, oh, so where do you want to paint your big mural, Mr. G? And so we're walking around the city, and there was this huge wall there. And while we were looking at it, we were just having a bit of a discussion. So, oh yeah, we could do this. Was big wall. And as we were talking, this Brazilian guy came and walked past us, and he knew who I was. He recognized me as like, oh, Mr. G. Oh, hey, I follow you on Instagram, bro. Anyway, he was like, hey, I actually live here in Taranaki, and so you see that tree next to that wall? And we looked at it, and I was like, oh. And he said, that's actually a yellow pūtakawa tree. Yeah, and so it kind of hit me when he said that, because I was like, oh, wow, he tohu tērā. So when the Māori says that, said, that's a sign, sort of thing. He said, when he said that, I was like, that's the wall. This is the location. Let's go, sort of thing. And so another aspect of, I guess, the way I work too is operating in Te Ao Wairua. There is a very real spiritual element to our work as well. And I think when you start tapping into that realm and you start manifesting ideas that come from that realm, you really are tapping into something out of this world, and I think that's where stuff really gets exciting, you know, because you end up becoming a bit of a conduit for something bigger than yourself, you know, and you have no idea what that painting could be doing for someone, you know, and all that sort of stuff. I remember times where a couple of days I'd come off scissor lift painting and all that, and I remember one lady who was staring up at it and she was crying. Yeah, she was a Pākehā lady, and it really touched me when I saw she was all teary-eyed. So in the portrait of Hana Tēmara Jackson, I painted her, in the reflection of her eyes, I painted Taranaki Maunga, and so that was her mountain. And so again, for me, that was really about highlighting her intimate connection to Taranaki Maunga and that rohe and stuff too. And so again, I mentioned all this sort of stuff, so hopefully you're kind of hearing these key words: hononga, intimate connection, whakapapa, you know, all these keywords really matter when it comes to, I guess for me as an artist, as a storyteller. And I'm really just trying to share a lot of the stuff from my own world that you can kind of, I guess, cherry pick and sift out that hopefully might be of use and value to you. Yeah, so yeah, that Hana Tēmara Jackson, that was a significant, I guess, project for me. I have huge love for Taranaki and the people of Taranaki. They spoilt me, they put me on a helicopter, we ended up flying over Taranaki Maunga. They flew me into Parihaka as well, and I got a rich kōrero from them as well, and yeah, just those real precious experiences that I'm truly grateful for. Just in closing, one other project I've done was I painted a big portrait of Prince in his hometown of Chanhassen in Minneapolis. And so I painted it purely because I'm a Prince fan, you know, and I wanted to pay tribute to him. Anyway, when I painted that, that ended up becoming one of the top 10 landmarks of the state of Minnesota. Yeah, it had a sign and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so I was cracking up, you know, I was on the blooming news over there and stuff, and I was like, oh, there was a Maltiti boy on the, yeah. But yeah, you know, and I think, you know, again, it's just testament to the power of visual arts in terms of how it can really touch people's lives, you know, and really transform. In closing too, I just finished doing a painting of a bird at the school my wife works for. Quite a big mural, but there was a beautiful photo that was sent to me, and so say that was the wall. There was a photo sent to me of a little kid was just lying down in front of the mural and just staring up at the mural, and just, this was the day after it had been painted. And I guess for me, you know, it's just again the power of art, visual storytelling, connection, and how it moves people in different ways as well. Yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, in a nutshell. Without hononga, space is just space. Without hononga, with hononga, space becomes place. Yeah, so just tying in the whole thing of meaning, you know, through story, laying that foundation from a te ao Māori perspective and stuff. So yeah, nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Mauri ora. Kia ora.